Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, and today I want to talk to you about a chronic problem at the holiday table and in the nonprofit space, and that is the overloading of plates. There is this tendency to think that if we could only do more, if we could only run faster, if I only try to get more done, put more on my plate, I will get more done. But this is not true. You've heard me say it before if you've been following my work. Doing less, putting less on your plate is the secret to getting more done. So let's talk about the hidden costs of overloading you and your staff with multiple roles or overloading their plates. First is decreased productivity. Overloading your staff spreads their focus too thin, and this leads to mistakes, inefficiencies, missed deadlines, which has all sorts of ripple effects like losing people's trust, frustration, feeling down. Another hidden cost is the loss of expertise. When we overload our plates, when we're juggling multiple roles, we can't excel in any one area, right? So what is that saying? A master of everything is a master of nothing. That is not the saying, but maybe you know what I'm talking about. It's actually been proven that when we try to multitask, we get cognitive overload and our IQ temporarily diminishes. So that's where we get this loss of expertise, and that reduces the quality of our work and our staff's work. And I mean, I don't know about you, but our nonprofits are solving really important problems in the world. We shouldn't be doing our work with low quality standards. A third hidden cost of overloading your plate is long-term burnout with staff leads to staff turnover, resulting in additional costs of recruitment and onboarding cycles. All right, let's talk about how high workloads contribute to burnout and high turnover specifically. One reason is when we have overloaded plates, it causes chronic stress. Those heavy workloads lead to stress, impacting our and our staff's mental and physical health. It also causes a loss of morale. Overworked staff often feel undervalued and underappreciated, driving them to leave. Now, I work with executive directors who can be very sticky, meaning they don't like to quit even when it's really painful, but they secretly tell me often in my coaching calls with them in the Thrive program that they spend a lot of time thinking about quitting. They spend a lot of time having conversations with their families asking them to quit. And imagine if they're spending all this time and energy thinking about leaving, feeling undervalued, feeling overworked. That's time they could be spending doing the work, making a difference. And that's a really important thing. And then we have all these ripple effects related to being overworked. That high turnover burdens the remaining staff who have stayed, and it creates this vicious cycle of overwork and burnout. All right, let's talk about why underfunding and understaffing, right, which is often what's behind that overloaded plate. We have an overloaded plate because we're underfunded and thus we are understaffed, right? So we have an overloaded plate because we're understaffed. We're understaffed because we're underfunded. And right, that's where we get scratching down to the root of this problem. But this creates unsustainable expectations for us and our staff. Things like impossible standards. These limited resources and too few staff create unachievable goals. They're frustrating for everyone, and oftentimes staff get blamed for not being able to achieve a goal that's supposedly theirs when really it's this root problem of being underfunded and thus understaffed. I see this too when I see job descriptions out there in the nonprofit space, job descriptions for roles that the expectations, having unrealistic expectations of what one person can achieve, it's already in there. It's baked in from day one. Also, we get mission drift, right? Do you know what that is? That's when you start doing things that aren't in alignment with your mission. And I have spent lots of time helping organizations get out of really kind of failing situations, difficult situations. And one of the first things we start doing is we start cutting away those mission drift activities. So, how does this relate to overloading your plate? Well, when we overload our plate and our staff find themselves in survival mode, right? They focus on survival tasks and they pull away from our organization's true impact goals. And they don't have the energy to pursue the hard stuff, which is ultimately the stuff that's going to propel us forward. Then what happens is we get damage to our reputation, right? This chronic understaffing means chronically missed deadlines and lowered results in our quality of work. And ultimately, this signals to our funders, our partners, and our future hires that we have poor management. And then, right, even less funding comes in. On the flip side of this, I'll tell you, so many of my clients in the Thrive program, they come in and they start implementing the impact method, which is this operating framework for running a nonprofit. And they tell me that, I was just focusing on like streamlining and organizing how we were running internally. We didn't focus on fundraising at all. And yet money just started coming in, right? Because when you are doing everything right in a quality way, reducing what's on your plate, streamlining, optimizing, you start to signal without even trying to the world that you have quality management, that you are a good investment, and your funders, your partners take notice and they start chipping in. It's kind of amazing. It's like magic. It's not really magic. It's just doing the work, the focus work of getting organized and getting the right amount of stuff on your plate. So, a few quick tips to get you going in the right direction so you don't overload your plate. One is rank your tasks, right? In the impact method, we have a whole system where we have our tasks that are aligned with our critical projects, and our critical projects are aligned with our goals. But if you're not ready to implement such a comprehensive system, just think about putting your tasks in order by priority, right? The ones that are going to make the biggest impact at the top of the list, right? Where you're going to get stuff done, and focus on getting those biggest impact things done. And don't worry so much, just worry about what's made it to the top of the list. So each time you do something, look at the list, say which is the most critical, mission critical goal or task that I could be working on, prioritize that, work it until it's done, and then pull the next most important thing from your list. Another tip I have for you, you've heard me say streamlining, optimizing. Do streamline your processes. Think about how you're doing things. Look for things that you can eliminate. Ask yourself, like, do I really need to be doing this? And a really good way to ask that question is, what would happen if I just stopped doing this? And if you're not like sure that it would be terrible, try not doing it for a week or 2 weeks. See what happens. See what the actual consequences are from not doing it. And I suspect you will discover that there are a lot of things that you're doing that nobody will miss or notice, and it's not going to cause any crazy fires if you stop doing them. My third tip for you today is to empower your teams. Delegate tasks thoughtfully, right? So delegate things carefully and hire and upskill your staff to fill gaps in capacity. And even better than filling gaps in capacity and delegating to your team is get your team to come together and delegate As a team, the process of eliminating things that aren't so important. We do this in the impact method in our weekly staff meetings that we call issues meetings. And that's where staff come together to basically identify what is important that needs to be worked on and where are there issues coming up, right? So if an issue is somebody is constantly not getting enough done, and we're used to bringing that up as a community, as a culture in our staff meetings, then we can start tackling those problems as a group and figuring out and calling each other out on, what can realistically be done. I remember a client who we started doing this so well. They'd call BS on each other. They were very loving, supportive, peer mental health organization. And they would do their weekly planning meetings. And in their planning meetings, they'd each leave with what they were going to do for that week. And at the very end of the meeting, they'd do a little check-in and call BS on each other's lists, essentially saying like, you can't really do all of that in a week or 2 weeks. These were actually 2-week planning meetings. So you can't actually do this in 2 weeks, right? You're not that superhuman, although we love you. So take some things off your plate and come back for seconds once you've finished everything, but don't put everything on your plate all at once. And so they very lovingly develop this culture of calling each other out on overloading their plates. It's a lot easier to call someone else out on overloading their plate than it is to call yourself out on overloading your plate. Ultimately, lightening your staff's load is going to mean better work-life balance, right? Reasonable workloads help employees feel more in control of their time, happier, increased engagement with your staff. Your staff is going to focus on the most meaningful things, on the most high-impact tasks, and that's going to move everything forward. It's going to boost morale and commitment. Boosted commitment means lower staff turnover. And then ultimately, when your whole team is no longer overloaded, your team is going to be stronger. So each individual is going to be stronger and more effective at getting things completed. And that's going to mean the whole team is going to experience that as well. And it's going to have an exponential effect. That's what I have for you today. If you would like tips like this in your inbox, you can access them by going to inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. And that's where you can sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, which I generate most weeks for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership community. If you'd like to join the Thrive program, if you're thinking, I do want that full comprehensive system, I want to learn the impact method and I want Sarah's guidance in taking our organization every step of the way through unloading our plates and systematizing and optimizing our operations, you can express your interest by going to pivotground.com/application. Fill out a simple application just to tell me a little bit about yourself and your organization. And the next step after that is we will hop on a call and discuss what's right for you. Until next time, all the best.